A student holding a basketball points out that lunch break is almost over, asking his friend if he's finished yet, and his friend is hunched over his desk, scribbling furiously as he insists he's almost done with his work. The young man watches his companion struggle, remarking that only his hand seems to be moving fast. He decides to give up on playing, saying it's freezing outside anyway. His friend agrees, still claiming he was nearly finished, and so leaning on the basketball, the youth complains that the cold snap is ridiculous and its name should be changed. His spectacled friend asks what he would change it to. He replies that he would choose something that sounds more intense. The friend mentions that the actual name for it is already quite brutal. A nearby student overhears and asks what the name means. He explains that when spring arrives the flowers begin to bloom beautifully. However, this makes the sky angry. It seems the sky gets jealous of the flowers' beauty, so it sends the cold to kill them all. His friend thinks the sky is a psycho. The listener asks how he knows such a strange story, and the youth claims he read it in a book, and his friend immediately calls him out, saying he's never seen him read a book before. The boy with the ball just smirks. At that moment the spectacled boy finally finishes his work and excitedly asks if they can play basketball now. His companion looks out the window, noting that they'd only have time to bounce the ball twice before having to come back in, and so an elderly teacher then enters the classroom for self-study, complaining about his sore back as he walks to the front. The student who wanted to play basketball slumps over his desk, regretting that he rushed his homework just for this. Nearby, a female classmate searches frantically through her bag. The spectacled boy asks if she lost something. She explains that she's looking for a photo she took the day before, getting more frustrated as she searches. He finds it strange, wondering aloud why anyone would have taken her picture. An idea strikes him, and he asks the girl if Kim Eisen visited during lunch. She says someone did, but it wasn't her. The scene cuts to another student, Kim Eisen from a different class, looking at his phone as others wonder why he still has it. The girl insists it was the student who hangs out with smokers, but her friend disagrees. The teacher interrupts, calling their loud argument a lover's quarrel. He tells them to stop bothering the other students and go to sleep if they're going to chatter. The two quietly agree. The spectacled boy feels embarrassed by the teacher's comment. The girl beside him then asks him to tell her what he knows. He looks at her, confused by her sudden request, and so his attention is then drawn to something outside the window. He sees strange black trails rising into the sky and wonders what they are, and he tries to get the girl's attention, but she's still annoyed from earlier and tells him to stop bothering her. He urges her to look, his voice filled with alarm as he points toward the window. Suddenly, a blinding white light fills the entire classroom, catching everyone by surprise. The light quickly fades, leaving the students and the teacher in a state of confusion. All the students in the classroom look around, disoriented and murmuring in shock. The teacher, covering his eyes, asks what the flash was. He stammers, trying to get everyone to be quiet. The spectacled boy gets up and looks out the window as other students wonder if a nuke just went off. He stares in shock at the school sports field below, where a strange object has appeared. He questions what he's seeing. A closer look reveals a grotesque, fleshy creature with a large tooth-filled mouth emerging from the ground. Other students crowd the window to see the disgusting monster, some struggling to get a view, and so the teacher frantically yells for everyone to calm down and sit, while looking at his phone with a worried expression. He stares at his phone in confusion, wondering why it isn't working as it should. A close shows his message failing to send, a loading symbol spinning endlessly. The boy asks his classmate to move so he can see better. Another student comments that it must be an alien. He agrees to let her look, but his own gaze remains fixed on the scene outside, a bead of sweat on his face. A student suggests they should film the creature outside, asking if anyone still has their phone. Suddenly, a small black sphere appears inside the classroom. The mysterious dark sphere hangs silently in the air, its textured surface emitting a faint, central glow. The spectacled boy and the girl beside him stare at the object, completely confused about what it could be. And so, the teacher yells for everyone to stay put as he rushes out of the room, intending to go to the teacher's office for help. In another part of the room, a female student's hand trembles so violently that she can no longer write. A blonde classmate named Koigsu notices her shaking and asks if she is alright. The girl Kim Sujin whispers that she is cold and scared. As she speaks, her face turns deathly pale and her skin begins to crack. Jangsu stares in horror as her breath becomes visible. The girl starts crying for her mother, overwhelmed by fear and cold. Her classmate grabs her, telling her to snap out of it. The spectacled student quickly intervenes, putting a hand on Jiangsu's shoulder and telling him to wait. Jiangsu insists they must take her to the nurse's office, but the girl collapses onto her desk, saying it's too cold. As she slumps over, the black sphere floating above her crackles with dark energy, and Jiangsu stares in shock. He tries to help her up, but she lifts her head to reveal a monstrous face with empty, black eyes, making a strange sound. He screams and stumbles back in terror, demanding to know what she is as the sphere continues to spark above her. Other students watch the scene unfold, wondering about about Jiangsu's reaction and the strange object on Kim Sujin's head. A close-up shows her skin cracking around her mouth, revealing a set of sharp, horrifying teeth. Her head then splits open, her jaw unhinging as her entire body begins to gruesomely transform. The spectacled boy is frozen in place, his eyes wide with utter shock and disbelief at the terrifying transformation. Choi Jiangsu falls to the floor, paralyzed with fear as the creature's shadow looms over him, and he stammers in terror. And so the rest of the students are petrified, their faces slick with sweat as they stare at the horrific scene. The monster's transformation seems complete as its massive, veiny hand slams down onto the wooden desk. The monstrous creature looms over the terrified students, its lanky, gray body perched atop the classroom desks. It lets out a strange gurgling sound as the black sphere above its head continues to emit a faint light. So all the students are frozen in place, sweating and staring in pure horror at the creature that was once their classmate. The initial shock breaks as one student drops a book, the sound echoing in the tense silence and signaling the start of chaos. A girl screams as the creature turns its head, its grotesque form filling the students with absolute dread. And so, panic erupts in the classroom as everyone scrambles to run, pushing and shoving each other in a desperate attempt to escape. And so amid the chaos, the spectacled boy gets knocked around, trying to stay on his feet while his classmates flee in terror. He clutches his face, his glasses knocked crooked, and frantically looks for his friend Hong Jin in the crowd. He finds her on the floor near a desk, paralyzed by fear. She looks up at him and weakly asks for help. The young man rushes to her side and asks if she is hurt. She tells him her legs have just given out from the shock. He looks around at the pandemonium, his face covered in sweat as the gravity of their hopeless situation sinks in. Meanwhile, other students, including the blonde youth, push past everyone, screaming for people to get out of their way. The monster watches the fleeing students, letting out another gurgle as one boy screams for his mother while running. One student tries to rally a group to escape together, but his words are lost in the widespread screaming. As a male student makes a run for the door, he stumbles, revealing a bloody wound on his side. His face is a mask of shock and pain as he realizes he has been injured in the chaos. The creature is now near the classroom door, extending long black tendrils and blocking the only exit. It swiftly strikes the injured student with a sharp appendage, causing him to fall to the floor screaming in agony. And the other students watch in absolute terror as their classmate is brutally attacked right before their eyes. The chaos spills into the hallway as students trip over each other, screaming for help and for someone to call the police. The captured student screams at his fleeing classmates, desperately begging them not to abandon him. The creature holds him suspended in the air by his leg, its strange gurgling sound mixing with his terrified screams. It brings him closer to its massive, tooth-filled maw as the boy desperately pleads for someone to save him. Hiding behind a desk, the spectacled boy holds his terrified classmate as the desperate pleas echo through the room. He watches in absolute horror, his eyes wide with fear, unable to look away from the gruesome scene unfolding. The monster then shoves the upper half of the boy's body into its mouth, the victim's legs dangling lifelessly. And so blood covers the student's face as the dark sphere above him begins to drip a black, viscous liquid. And suddenly, sharp black tendrils shoot out from the sphere, piercing the young man's head from within the monster's mouth. After a moment, the creature casually tosses the lifeless body of its victim aside, the attack over as quickly as it began. The classroom falls silent for a moment as the creature crouches on a desk, its hunt seemingly complete. Still hidden, the young man keeps his hand over his companion's mouth, both of them trying to stay completely silent. The monster's head turns toward the door, alerted by panicked shouts from the hallway telling someone to call the police. The two students remain frozen under the desk, their eyes fixed on the creature as it reacts to the noise. It lets out another low, guttural sound, its attention now fully on the commotion outside the classroom. The creature turns its body, seemingly ready to investigate the source of the sounds from the hallway. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the school, a student looks up at the ceiling, complaining about how loud the screaming is. By a window, one student worries the school might collapse, but his companion dismisses the noise as just idiots making a fuss. In the school bathroom, they discuss the strange events, acknowledging how weird the situation is and wondering what the creature is. The gray-haired youth smirks, daring his friend to go touch the thing on the field for 10,000 won. His friend immediately refuses, saying he wouldn't do it even for 50,000. The other boy just laughs, teasing him for being scared. The student holding a cigarette smirks, telling his friend that he was just kidding about the money. And so, he looks out at the creature on the field, commenting on its appearance and wondering who would ever dare to touch it. And suddenly, he stops, an idea forming in his mind as he looks back at his companion. With a sinister grin, he announces that he has just had a really good idea. He points to another student, Chielman, who is lying unconscious on the bathroom floor, and orders his friend to wake him up. And the friend asks if they are going to beat him up more, but the gray-haired youth says no. He explains with a smug look that he has thought of a way to satisfy his curiosity about the strange object. A moment later, Chilman is forced to walk across the grassy field, his own shoes now on his feet. Blindfolded and disoriented, he stumbles forward, asking nervously if all he has to do is go to the creature. From a balcony above, the bully yells at him, threatening to kill him if he asks again. The blindfolded boy quickly apologizes. The bully remarks on how the boy is walking in a straight line, completely unaware of his surroundings, while his friend films. The friend, however, looks worried, asking what will happen to them if the boy dies. The blindfolded student continues his slow, hesitant walk toward the massive, fleshy creature, which remains perfectly still. So the bully calls his friend a coward, pointing out that the creature on the field isn't even moving. He grins excitedly, admitting he is dying to know what will happen. He then tells his friend to shut up and keep filming. Chilman takes another cautious step forward, getting closer to the motionless creature. He clutches his side, complaining about his ribs and saying he can barely walk from the previous beating, and despite the pain, he tries to pull himself together, knowing that facing the creature is better than getting beaten again. He finally reaches the creature and extends a trembling hand, hesitantly touching its rough, gray skin. Back in the classroom, the two students remain hidden under the desk, staying completely silent as they wait. The monster in the classroom lets out a low gurgle, its head turning slightly as the black sphere above it glows faintly, and fully turns its attention toward the two hidden students, its gurgling sound growing more distinct and menacing. The speckled boy's face drains of color, sweat beading on his forehead as he realizes they are completely screwed. The creature begins to move, its long, spindly limbs sliding silently across the tops of the desks, closing the distance. He turns to his companion and yells for her to run, but the girl is frozen in place, screaming in absolute terror. Suddenly, the monster launches itself forward with incredible speed, its dark appendage swinging through the air. Its hand grips the edge of a desk, the wood cracking under the immense pressure of its lunge. And so, it crashes headfirst not into the students but into the wall behind them, smashing through the concrete with a powerful impact. The boy is caught in the blast, shielding his face as chunks of the wall and dust explode outwards. He stares at the destruction, his eyes wide with shock as debris rains down around him and his ears ring from the impact. After the dust settles, he looks around the destroyed classroom, his mind struggling to process what just happened. He looks over at his companion, urging her to run while they have a chance, but she remains on the floor, sobbing. The girl is completely overwhelmed, clutching her head as she cries for her mother, unable to move from her spot. He watches her, a sense of despair washing over him as he realizes she has completely lost her composure. The young man quickly glances around the room, his expression tense as he tries to figure out their next move. The creature slowly pulls itself from the rubble, its massive hands gripping the desks for support as it regains its footing. He watches the monster, his face pale with sweat, his mind racing as the creature prepares to move again. Beside him, the girl continues to tremble, whispering that she's scared, completely paralyzed by her fear. Small pieces of concrete are scattered on the floor around her feet, a stark reminder of the creature's power. Her foot shifts slightly, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement in the tense silence of the destroyed classroom. As the speckled boy moves away, the girl is left behind, still trembling on the floor by the broken wall. Her eyes are wide with terror as she sobs, barely managing to whisper for her mother. The horrifying creature now stands directly over her, its massive form blocking out the light. She lets out a final desperate scream, completely consumed by fear and despair. From the hallway, a teacher dismisses the commotion, ignoring a student's plea for him not to enter. A muscular teacher then appears at the doorway, holding a baseball bat and scolding the students, but his lecture is cut short as he finally sees the monster and screams in shock. And so a black appendage shoots out from the creature, piercing the teacher through the torso. He looks down in stunned silence as his arm is sliced clean off by the lightning-fast attack. The teacher screams in agony while the monster crouches on the desks, its dark work done. The girl remains on the floor, completely lost in her fear as she mutters to herself. The room seems to turn red with her terror as she screams for her mother to save her. With tears streaming down her face, she squeezes her eyes shut, repeating that she doesn't want to die. Just then a hand grabs her wrist, causing her to flinch in surprise. It's the spectacled boy. He pulls her up, complaining about how heavy she is. She sobs his name, relieved to not be alone. She asks him where he was, and he replies bluntly that he was in the bathroom. Meanwhile, the muscular teacher's body lies motionless in the hallway next to his dropped bat. The monster twists its body inside the classroom, its head twitching as it scans the area. It then leaps forward, grabbing another student and flinging them effortlessly through the air, and the creature finally crashes through the classroom door and disappears into the hallway. The creature finally exits through the shattered doorway, disappearing from the classroom for now. The room is left in complete chaos, with desks and chairs scattered across the floor in its wake, and the spectacled boy and his companion have managed to hide inside a tall supply cabinet in the corner of the room. Huddled together in the darkness, the girl asks what they should do. He whispers that he can hear footsteps outside. She looks at him with wide, terrified eyes, her fear mixing with frustration at their predicament. And from inside their cramped hiding spot, they debate whether the monster has truly gone outside or if it's still lurking nearby. After a tense moment of silence, the girl thanks him for coming back to help her, admitting she thought she was going to die. He looks down, sweat beading on his face, and tells her it's fine, but he seems to have something else on his mind. The girl's expression changes as she suddenly accuses him, asking if he actually ditched her and ran away earlier. He denies it and urges her to be quiet. He points out she just thanked him, but she retorts that the two things are separate. He apologizes and offers to buy her snacks later. She demands he buy her things every day until they graduate. And so, the boy argues back, reminding her that he saved her life and that she should be the one buying things for him. As they argue, a long, gray hand silently creeps back into the classroom, unnoticed by the pair. The young man asks if she thinks the monster is gone. She suggests they try opening the cabinet door just a little to check. Unaware of the danger, he agrees to peek outside, not knowing the creature is now standing right in front of their hiding spot. His hand trembles as he slowly reaches for the cabinet door, preparing to open it just a tiny crack. Before he can touch the door, a low gurgling sound from just outside makes them both freeze in absolute terror. He glances down through the small crack between the doors, his eyes widening in horror at what he sees below. The monster's horrifying, tooth-filled maw is pressed right against the opening, peering directly into their hiding place. As the creature's hand rests on the door, he realizes they're doomed. There is nowhere left to run. Trapped inside the dark cabinet, the boy's mind races. He desperately seeks an escape, regretting that he didn't run alone. He then looks up suddenly, his expression shifting from panicked despair to utter confusion. The view from the crack in the door shows the ceiling of the supply closet. The creature that was peering in is gone. With wide, terrified eyes, he wonders where the monster could have possibly gone, and so he listens intently through the thin cabinet door, questioning if the creature might have simply left. His hand trembles with relief as the silence continues. He concludes that the monster has really gone, but just as they relax, a horrifying gurgling sound echoes from directly above them, inside the cabinet itself. The girl beside him lets out a piercing scream, her voice filled with pure, unadulterated terror. He joins her in screaming, pleading desperately as the gurgling sound grows louder and closer. And from a distance, the school building appears peaceful for a fleeting, deceptive moment. And suddenly, that peace is shattered as a violent explosion blows out the side of an upper-floor classroom. Back on the field, the blindfolded student, Chilman, remains standing beside the other strange creature. He keeps his hand on its surface, grimacing as pain shoots through his bruised ribs. His fingers slide across the creature's strange, fleshy texture as he explores it blindly, and dark tendrils then erupt from the creature, startling the boy. He yells out in shock, asking what is happening. And so, watching from the balcony, the two bullies laugh, thrilled that he actually touched it, and that they filmed the whole thing. Chilman stumbles back in confusion, calling out his own name as he tries to understand what is going on. The gray-haired bully tells his friend to get ready to capture the boy's reaction when his blindfold comes off. He then yells down at Chilman, taunting him to remove the blindfold himself if he is so curious. As he shouts, his friend suddenly grabs him from behind, causing the bully to react with angry surprise. The gray-haired bully looks back in confusion, his eyes wide as he tries to process what his friend just did. He then sees the gaping hole in the side of the school building, smoke billowing out as he wonders if a bomb went off. On the field, Chilman reacts to the loud explosion, clutching his blindfold as the ground shakes beneath him. He turns to face the school, his confusion mounting as he sees the smoke and destruction. And so suddenly, the monster from the classroom bursts out of the hole in the wall and lands on the field with a powerful impact. Watching from the balcony, the gray-haired bully's face pales, and he mutters that they are screwed. And elsewhere, other students watch the scene from a window, one of them commenting on how disgusting the creature looks. The stationary creature on the field seems to react to the comment, its toothy maw twitching slightly. And so, a girl points out that there's a person standing right in front of the creature on the field, and the other students strain to see, their murmurs growing louder as they try to identify the lone figure. They watch in disbelief as the blindfolded boy gets closer, wondering if he is insane for approaching the monster. And so a wave of excitement and shock runs through the crowd as they realize he's about to touch it. The students gasp as he makes contact, their faces a mixture of horror and morbid curiosity. A single bead of sweat rolls down one girl's face as her eyes remain glued to the unfolding scene. Students in another classroom also crowd the window, drawn by the commotion on the field below. And so, the creature from the classroom crashes through another window, continuing its rampage through the school. Chilman, still blindfolded, slowly removes his hand from the creature, his confusion growing. As he starts to pull at his blindfold, a sudden sense of dread washes over him. Just as his blindfold comes off, the other monster lands directly in front of him with a deafening crash. All the students who were watching from the windows now turn away, their faces pale with shock and fear. And students watching from the windows are frozen in horror, their faces pale and their eyes wide with disbelief. On the field below, the monster that emerged from the classroom is surrounded by a cloud of dust and debris, letting out a terrifying scream. And so panic erupts in the classrooms as students scream for their parents and for someone to call the police. The creature looks back at the school building, the distant screams echoing across the now devastated schoolyard. On the balcony, the bully's friend tells him to shut up and run, pointing at the monster as he flees. Back in the classroom, the supply cabinet is covered in rubble and dust from the explosion that tore through the wall, and the spectacled boy and the girl sit amidst the debris inside the broken cabinet, both breathing a sigh of relief as he says they're alive. And so, the girl clutches her arms, her eyes still wide with terror as she admits she thought she was going to die from fear. He gets up and looks out through the massive hole where the wall used to be, remarking on the complete destruction, and she peeks out from behind the cabinet as he crawls to the edge. She asks if the monster went far, but he says it is still in the schoolyard. He looks down at the field below, his gaze fixed on the creature that had just burst from their classroom. It crouches silently on the grass, completely motionless. He notes that something about its stillness is very strange. In the background, other students are in a full-blown panic, running and shouting as they try to escape the building, and so his companion asks what they should do, pointing out the chaos. He seems preoccupied with the monster in the schoolyard. She urges him to leave with her, worried that the creature might decide to come back to their classroom. He looks overwhelmed, surrounded by the sounds of panicked students as he wonders where they could possibly go. The girl suggests they head outside first, but she hesitates as she remembers the scene on the field. Down on the field, the other creature is now visible, holding a skeletal figure in its monstrous hands. The two stand by the gaping hole in the wall, realizing that going outside is the most dangerous choice they could make. They then wonder where everyone else is running to, watching the frantic exodus of students with no clear destination. And so, he looks at his companion and concludes that the fleeing students are just panicking without thinking. Suddenly, a figure appears behind them. The spectacled boy suggests they go to the teacher's office to get their phones. The newcomer, Kim Izan, smirks and tells them there's no need for that. He then asks why their classroom is such a mess, and the spectacled boy demands to know why he is here. The girl explains that the monster in the schoolyard came from their classroom and was once their classmate, Kim Soo-jin. A random student runs up and calls out to Kim Izan, confused about the mention of Kim Soo-jin from their class. She then asks him what he means about not needing to go to the teacher's office, questioning if he already went. He holds up his phone, explaining that all the phones are useless right now. Nothing is working. The spectacled boy demands to know why, but Kim Izan simply says he has no idea. The girl wonders aloud if the monster is jamming the signal. Her companion agrees that it could be a possibility. Izan suggests they move somewhere safe and wait for the police or military to arrive, and she asks if he has a specific place in mind, and he replies that he thinks the rooftop would be a good spot. Her friend immediately suggests the auditorium, while Izan counters with the cafeteria. The three of them are at a standoff. The trio stands in the destroyed classroom, each with a different idea of the safest place to hide. Izan questions their choices, saying they make no sense. The girl retorts that she could say the same about his idea, and so the spectacled boy interrupts, saying they don't have time to argue and should head to the auditorium. Izan cuts in, telling them both to shut up and consider the worst-case scenario, being stuck there for over a month. He argues that they'll need food first. The other two think a month is an exaggeration, suggesting 2 or 3 days at most. He points to the broken wall, insisting they need to find somewhere sturdy to hide, like the auditorium, and so the girl questions why they're even thinking about hiding instead of trying to escape, and she argues that they should be focused on getting rescued, but her friend just looks at her, confused by the word. The girl gets frustrated, pointing out that in a situation like this, a rescue team should be on their way. Izan confidently states that a helicopter will arrive within the hour to rescue them. She agrees with him, arguing that if a rescue helicopter isn't sent now, then when would it be? Her speckled friend considers this for a moment, his expression shifting as he realizes she has a point. The two agree to head to the rooftop, relieved that it's a better plan than hiding in the cafeteria. Just as they decide to leave, the girl suddenly stumbles, her body lurching forward unexpectedly, and her friend quickly catches her, asking if she is alright and what just happened. Izan also turns in concern. The girl explains that her legs gave out, just like they did before. Her eyes are wide with a mixture of fear and embarrassment as she struggles to stay upright. He tells her he thought the tension had eased while they were talking, and then asks if she can walk. She looks down at his hand gripping her arm, his fingers trembling slightly as he supports her. A realization dawns on her as she understands that everyone is scared, they're just trying to hold it in. She pulls herself together, insisting she is fine and can walk on her own. He agrees, and they prepare to leave. The three of them leave the destroyed classroom behind, heading out into the chaotic school. They quickly make their way to a nearby stairwell, their footsteps echoing in the tense silence. And so they climb. The girl asks if the rooftop is even open, mentioning that delinquents often smoke up there. She turns to Izan, accusing him of suggesting the rooftop without knowing for sure if they could get in. He assures them that he can open the door, even if it's a pain, and continues up the stairs. As they follow, he casually mentions that he doesn't smoke, which only adds to their confusion. Upon reaching the rooftop, Izan is pleased to find the door already unlocked, assuming other students got there first. He easily opens the door, the latch already disengaged from the broken lock. The three of them step out onto the rooftop, their expressions a mixture of relief and lingering anxiety. They find a group of students already gathered there, all looking equally shaken and confused. The two bullies from before are among the group, and one of them recognizes Izan and his friends. A girl asks her companion what they should do now, but he just tells her to be quiet for a moment, and the spectacled boy notes that quite a few students are on the rooftop, likely all having the same idea about the helicopter. His female friend observes that everyone looks pale, and Izan replies that it's to be expected given the circumstances. The spectacled boy suddenly lets out a curse, his eyes wide with a new sense of dread. Izan looks down at his own feet, a grim expression on his face as he says they are really screwed. His two companions look at him in confusion, demanding to know what he means. And so, he looks out at the sky and tells them that the rescue team they are waiting for might not come, and so small hair-like structures begin to sprout from his pointing finger as he directs their attention. He points toward a distant building, asking if they can see what's on its roof. A creature identical to the one in their schoolyard is perched atop the building, its form silhouetted against the sky. They stare in horror, realizing the monster in their schoolyard is not an isolated incident. Izan collapses to the ground, overwhelmed by the realization that the situation is far worse than they imagined. He runs a hand through his hair, wondering where everyone else went and why he was left behind, and he then notices a student lying on the ground nearby, shivering and complaining about the cold. The student Choi Jang-soo pushes himself up, yelling for whoever is messing with him to come out. More smoke rises from the distant city as the monster perches ominously on the rooftop, surveying its surroundings. The students on the school roof are frozen in place, their minds reeling from the impossible sight before them. The spectacled boy gasps, his hand hitting the railing as he struggles to comprehend the scale of the disaster. Another student remarks that the city seems calmer now, mentioning that the building was in chaos just a short while ago. He stares at the distant building, a bead of sweat rolling down his face as he processes the word, chaos. A closer view reveals a massive hole in the side of the building, the interior office space now exposed to the open air. Inside the destroyed office, a man lies motionless on the floor, a dark one visible on his chest. A monstrous gray hand reaches in through the hole, its long fingers hovering over the deceased man's body. The hand descends, its massive palm pressing down on the man's chest with immense force. And so, it then lifts the body, a dark stain spreading on the floor as it pulls the victim out of the building. The man's body is dragged through the hole, disappearing from view as a trail of black ooze is left behind, and the spectacled boy grips the bars of the rooftop railing, his knuckles white as he watches the horrific scene. The horrifying truth dawns on him: the chaos is not just at their school. It's happening everywhere. His companion approaches him, her voice trembling as she asks if they are going to be okay, and he can only stare out at the city, wondering why this is happening to their neighborhood of all places. The boy admits they don't know if this is a localized event or if the whole country, or even the world, is under attack. One of the bullies approaches, telling him he's talking nonsense and that the situation is already bad enough. The bully warns him to shut up before he decides to kill him himself. The two of them stare back at the bully, shocked by his sudden and aggressive outburst. The bully then grabs the girl by the hair, threatening to throw her to the monsters as food. The girl struggles against the bully's grip, telling him to get his hand off of her. Her friend weakly tells the bully to stop. The gray-haired delinquent just scoffs, a smug look on his face as he points at the spectacled boy. Before he can react, the spectacled boy lunges forward, taking the hit meant for Izan. He is completely stunned, his eyes wide with shock as he watches his friend take the blow. The girl falls to the ground from the force of the slap, her cheeks stinging and her mind reeling. She touches her face, a red mark already forming as she stares up at the bully in disbelief. The bully looks annoyed, waving his hand dismissively as he comments on the boy's interference. And spectacled youth jumps in front of the girl protectively, telling the delinquent to wait. The bully mocks him for taking the hit, asking if he's willing to take a punch next. The boy stammers, trying to find the right words as he faces the intimidating delinquent. A girl with short black hair walks up and tells the bully to stop, her voice calm but firm. Her companion agrees, saying that the situation is getting ridiculous. The bully turns to her annoyed. He calls her a first-year punk, pointing out her bent nameplate, and she calmly reminds him that a student just died in front of the whole school, questioning if now is really the time for gang games. The bully's face contorts in rage. He asks if she wants to join the dead student and then calls out to Chiolman. Izan finally steps forward, a cold expression on his face as he confronts the delinquent. The bully smirks, undeterred by Izan's presence, and asks if he wants to get involved too. And the spectacled boy and the girl watch from the side, thinking that this is definitely not the time for a fight. He clutches his head, a headache forming from the overwhelming stress of the situation. And so other students on the rooftop watch the confrontation, whispering among themselves about the fight breaking out. As the students argue, a small black sphere floats unnoticed in the sky above them. The spectacled boy spots it first, his eyes widening as he recognizes the ominous object. And Choi Jong-soo, the student who is shivering on the ground, begins to transform, the same dark energy crackling around him. Just like Kim Soo-jin, his body contorts to a monstrous form, his humanity slipping away. The spectacled boy stares in horror, a bead of sweat rolling down his face as he witnesses another transformation. The black sphere hovers ominously, its presence signaling the terrifying change about to take place. He grabs the girl beside him, yelling for her and Izan to get up and run. Izan and the bully look over, confused by his sudden outburst and dismissive of his warning. And he tries to explain, shouting that someone is about to turn into a monster and that they need to leave immediately. The other students on the rooftop are now all looking at him, a mixture of confusion and disbelief on their faces. The short-haired girl asks what he just said, while her companion nervously suggests they should just leave. The bully laughs, finding the idea of turning into monsters hilarious, while Izan just looks confused. Izan's expression is one of pure bewilderment, unable to make sense of the panicked claims. The boy points to the creature in the schoolyard, reminding them that it used to be their classmate, Kim Soo-jin. The revelation hits Izan hard. He breaks into a run, the bully and his friend shouting in confusion behind him. The spectacled boy and his companion also start running, yelling that he will explain everything later. And the short-haired girl decides to follow them, but her companion is hesitant, asking why they are running. The bully steps in front of her, blocking her path and telling the underclassmen to stop. Sue looks down at her with a menacing grin, asking where she thinks she is going. The girl just stares back at him, her expression unreadable as she is cornered by the delinquent. The bully clenches his fist, a determined look on his face as he prepares to confront the girl. But before he can act, a blood-curdling scream from the other side of the rooftop interrupts them. All eyes turn to Choi Jong-soo, who is now surrounded by a dark aura, his body contorting in a horrifying display. His face becomes a monstrous mask, his eyes turning black as he lets out a guttural, inhuman sound. The spectacled boy screams for everyone to run, his voice filled with urgency and terror. Izan reacts quickly, grabbing a nearby object and preparing to defend himself from the transforming student. He tries to lock the rooftop door, but the newly formed monster is too fast, its hand shooting out to stop him. Izan stares in shock as the monster's grotesque appendage blocks his only escape route, and so the bully and his friend are frozen in place, their fight completely forgotten as they witness the terrifying transformation. The monster's tendril wraps around a student's neck, lifting him into the air with ease. The creature's massive hand slams down on the student, crushing him instantly against the rooftop floor. Another student is grabbed by the monster's elongated arm, their body dangling helplessly in its grasp. Choi Jiangsu's face is a mask of pure terror, his mind repeating that they are all completely screwed. As student screams Izan's name, their plea for help echoing across the now silent rooftop. The spectacled boy screams at the top of his lungs for everyone to run, his voice cracking with fear. Izan makes a break for the door, his face a mask of determination as he tries to lead the others to safety. And so, the other students finally break from their stupor and start running, their screams filling the air as they flee in panic. Izan stumbles as he reaches the door, his body exhausted from the adrenaline and fear. He looks back over his shoulder, a look of concern on his face as he calls out for Hong Jinju. He sees his friend ushering the girl toward the door, urging her to hurry up as the monster closes in. Izan watches from the doorway as the monstrous creature continues its rampage across the school rooftop. He calls out his friend's name, Hong Jinju, his face sliquid as he watches the chaotic scene unfold. Suddenly, the monster strikes, sending Hong Jinju flying through the air and crashing violently into the rooftop fence. The creature turns its attention to the others as Izan and the girl scream their friend's name in horror, and Hong Jinyu collapses to the ground, coughing and gasping for breath as another student stares in shock. He looks up with a pained expression, his teeth clenched as he groans that he thinks he is dying. The massive creature now looms over the remaining students, its grotesque form casting a terrifying shadow over them.